Hey everybody, just a quick heads up before you get into the video. I apologize for this one. My microphone settings got a little messed up. XSplit crashed last night, and when I started it up again, my mic settings were all like maxed out and I didn't notice. So there's times where I'm yelling and the mic clips like really bad. I tried to like drop the audio as best as I could, but it's still very prevalent. The worst of it is definitely in the intro because you'll see I kind of talk very loudly in that one. And for the rest of the video, it's better. It's just occasionally it does peak. So I just wanted to give you guys a warning on that. I apologize. Logia users, ladies and gentlemen, they come in a cavalcade of different varieties. You got fiery, you got icy, you got gooey, you got gassy, you got sandy, you got smoky, you got spooky, snowy, shiny, sexy, shocky, and magma, I guess. Yeah, there's a lot of S words that can be used to describe Logias as I've discovered making this video, but there's a single absolute truth when discussing Logia users. Do you know what that is? That's right. Monet is the hottest, so she gets top billing in the thumbnail. My second option was Eneru, just because look at those abs. My goodness, you could grate cheese on those things. Barry, look away! The abs are too hypnotic! Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about some new possible Logias that could be popping up in the One Piece story in the future. Oda does not show too many of them out there. In fact, there's only about 12 right now. In fact, I think actually 11, because in fact 12 are the users, including Sabo and Ace, that have the same exact fruit. So, yeah, Logias are referred to as like one of the most rare devil fruits out there, only trumped by probably like Mythical Zone and like Ancient Zones, or maybe a little bit more harder to come by. Maybe not the Ancient Zones so much because, well, maybe the reason they're hard to come by is because Kaido keeps hoarding them all. Like, every time someone discovers, like, he has, like, spider sense with that. Like, somebody discovered the Triceratops Ancient Zone, we gotta find it, and then either kill that guy, take his fruit, or recruit him into my crew, because we can't have an Ancient Zone that's not as member of the Beast Pirates, right? But at least we know the mythical zones are harder to come by. But Logias are pretty rare, too, and we don't get to see that many, and I think another reason is there's only so many elements you could really utilize. When you come to zones, I mean, there's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of different animals out there in the world and various species that you can mix and match with the zone fruits, and even more so when you get into ancient, extinct animals and mythical creatures. Paramecia that's just Oda's like imagination, you know, funhouse right there. It's just like any random power that just pops into heads. I want a fruit that can make somebody turn into a giant missile. Then might that be a little bit OP? Yeah, exactly. It's OP. That's why it's going in One Piece. You know, all these crazy random Paramecia fruits out there. But Logias all come down to various elements that naturally occur in nature. So things like sand and mud and snow and fire and electricity or like lightning, you know? So there can't really be that many of them without it getting silly. And maybe that's the reason why we had that little bit of a retcon with Katakuri, where originally Katakuri was intended to be a Logia. And Oda kind of changed his mind on that later and made him a special Paramecia. We still don't know exactly the reason why he changed it, but it might have been just because, like, well, you know, that doesn't really fit very well with the theme, possibly, of Logias that I'm trying to do here. So, yeah, it's been a while since we got a Logia. In fact, I think, like, Caesar Clown and Monet were both Logias that the Straw Hats fought against at Punk Hazard, and I think those were the last canon Logias to be introduced into the story. Sabo got his Maramara later, but that fruit was already previously, you know, shown through Ace. Right, so in this video, I drew up a handy-dandy little list last night of just some interesting, at least I thought they were interesting, Logia powers. I tried to keep going along with the theme of naturally occurring elements, so we'll go into that. Probably not going to see these in the future of One Piece, but I just thought if Oda was going to introduce some new Logias, these are some interesting avenues he could take it. Also keep in mind, many of these might be similar to fruits we've already seen before in Logia, but we've already kind of seen that even in the story. Like, for example, Smoker can turn into smoke, and Caesar can turn into gas. So they're both gaseous forms, it's just that Caesar has better control over the gases he becomes, okay? So just keep that in mind. The first one I wanted to discuss, and I've already made a video about it, it's kind of like the idea of like a metal fruit. Alright, so you look at the periodic table of elements, you got a lot of metals on there. This metal is like silver is naturally occurring in nature, so that'd be really cool for you to turn into like pure silver or pure gold. Now, we kind of already did see this with Guild Tesoro in Film Gold, however, he was not a Logia, he was a Paramecia, Logia, so he could not turn his body into gold, but he had free control over gold. He can switch it back and forth between its liquid and solid states. Now, gold is not like the most durable metal on the planet. In fact, I think in its pure form, it's actually very, very soft, but still, the ability to just go from a liquid to a solid whenever you want, make a giant gold robot, that's pretty damn cool, right? So the idea I had in that video for the metal fruit would be like if you could actually just turn into like a metal statue kind of deal. So it's like someone tries to punch you, you're a Logia, you turn into like, I'm pure titanium, so suck it. Can't touch this, right? But here's something. What about Mercury? Yeah, because last night when I was making this list, I was also working on another project. I was working on the Black Clover Magic Knight Squad captains, and I was just making folders for each individual one. And then I got to know Zell Silva, who's the captain of the Silver Eagles, who has Mercury magic. So he can manipulate the metal of Mercury and make all this crazy stuff out of it. And I was sitting there, I'm like, oh my god, that is awesome, you know? So literally, like, look at it, like, that's Mercury in its natural form. I think, like, at, you know, room temperature, it looks like it's a liquid, essentially. It is a liquid. It's liquid metal. So yeah, for further interesting ways that you could incorporate that into a Logia, just go watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Like, it's right there. Like, I don't even need me to go into detail with that. I'm sure everybody's probably seen this movie at this point. If you haven't seen Terminator 2, what are you doing with your life? But yeah, a Mercury fruit, I mean, beyond just the poisonous aspects of it, you could, like, literally turn it into mercury and just, like, cover your opponent with it and just get in their wounds and stuff, and, like, well, yeah, you might be alive for now, but, you know, in the future, you might, yeah. So there's problems with that, but also just that liquid metal. You can imagine all the crazy things Oda could utilize with that, right? And I know Mercury doesn't really operate like that, because in Terminator, they have, like, nanobots and stuff inside of the metal that's, like, molding it around and things, but, you know, actual Mercury does not do that, but it's the world of One Piece, and if you're a Logia and you could turn into a metal, I think probably Mercury would be the safest bet because it exists in that liquid state, so you can have more fun with it. So yeah, Logia Mercury fruit, that is definitely one thing. Something else I went to is that, alright, you got Earth. Lots of different fruits that involve manipulating Earth or turning into Earth in some type of way. Alright, so for example, like you have Pika's fruit. Pika's not a Logia, but he has the stone assimilation fruit. So he does not turn his body into stone. He literally becomes one with stone or any kind of rock, and he can mold it to his own devices. He can make a giant mountain of himself made out of rock, alright? However, that fruit has a weakness, and it's if he's not around any type of mineral or Earth, then he can't use it. So if Pika was ever fighting on top of like a glacier in the Arctic, don't know why he would be there, but if he was, his fruit is completely useless. He wouldn't be able to do anything with it. However, I also want to keep in mind, though, that Pika, he's an Impel Down right now, I guess. All the Doflamingo family members that got captured just got thrown in Impel Down along with Dofi. So, you might want to keep a close eye on Pika, because if he ever gets out of those handcuffs, the Sea Prism Stone, and he gains access to his fruit, all of Impel Down will become his own playground. So you better be very, very cautious with having Pika. I would, like, nail that guy to the wall and, like, belt him with, like, Sea Prism straps, and, oh, this is getting intense. But it was, like, belt him to the freaking, like, not even an actual wall. Make it something that's not made of Earth. You know, belt him to, like, a thing of, like, I don't know, ice. I use the ice example. Something that's not Earth. I don't care what it is. And just make sure he can't come in contact with it. Like, have, oh, God, there's so many things. Because as we learned from Avatar The Last Airbender, even metal has pieces of Earth that are purified and refined. So even like chaining him to the ceiling and keeping him suspended and strapped in Sea Prism chains. I guess as long as it's Sea Prism, I guess you'd be okay. All right, so just use a Sea Prism chain and just chain him hangling there like a cocoon from the ceiling with Sea Prism, and you should be okay. But it would be very, very dangerous to have that guy in touch with any kind of metal. I mean, any kind of Earth and I guess natural metal, right? Because we don't know what he could do with that, right? But when it comes to Logias, we also have Crocodile that can become sand. Sand is just like rocks and minerals that are crushed up and, you know, really fine, or just the natural process of erosion. That's why we have beaches, you know, the tide coming in and out and waves crashing on the shore for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions and millions of years. That's how beaches and sand is a thing, right? Okay, cool. But it's still Earth, just like Caribou's Numa Numa no Mi is mud. It might be two different varieties of Earth, but it's still Earth, okay? So with that being said, I'm gonna give you my idea for consideration, the salt fruit. So first off, the user of this fruit would be extraordinarily salty at all times, you know, but he would also have abilities kind of similar to Crocodile. Maybe the salt would not be as fine as the sand is, so maybe more like gravel, like bigger chunks of it, and obviously it wouldn't be as powerful because, you know, Crocodile controlling sand, you know, in a desert country, he could whip up sandstorms and all this crazy stuff, and he could, like, dehydrate people. Although I guess the salt power could also maybe do that as well. It would be basically like just a lamer diet version of Crocodiles. But once again, salt is naturally occurring. It's a mineral. So yeah, I mean, if sand and mud, and you can have these fruits that are both Logia that could coexist in the world, you can also have a salt fruit as well. Not sea salt. I know it naturally occurs in the ocean, but it also naturally occurs just on land too. You know, it forms that way. You know, and something else to keep in mind is that Caribou's fruit is not just purely mud. It's the Numa no Mi. Numa just means swamp in Japanese, so it's the swamp fruit. A lot of times what Oda will do is he won't just give them a basic element, he'll give them an entire concept around to control. So for example, we'll just use Caribou's because we're talking about him. Caribou is literally the concept of a swamp. He's not just like, I make mud and fling mud at you. No, he can like literally make himself into a giant swamp several times his own body size, and he can drag stuff down into it. It's like a bottomless swamp kind of fruit. That's the whole concept that he has. So he could store weapons in there, he could capture mermaids, he can take entire ships, and he could just like make himself big enough like a giant mud puddle and just drag it down. Alright, so that he's the concept of a swamp. Then you have like Aokiji. He's not just the ice fruit, he's literally the concept of cold, and he reigns over cold. That's the power that he has with the Hiei, the chili fruit. Alright, so yeah, just keep that in mind going forward with a few of these. Let's just go into that one right now. So we have the salt fruit. This one is going to be very, very similar to Caesar's, but it has a different concept, so that's why I threw it in there. Because we already had Monet that has the Yuki no Mi that can turn into snow, I'm thinking, alright, well, you know, weather patterns and stuff, like sandstorms, snowstorms. Alright, what about rain? What about a rain zone? How the hell would that even, I mean, yeah, not a rain zone, a rain Logia. How would that even work? I'm like, alright, well, what if you had the user turn into a storm cloud? Alright, so yeah, it's a gaseous being, just like Smoker and Caesar, but literally just like a black storm cloud. So you punch them and they just disappear, and like, you know, little thunder and cracks in there. So it's like a side thing, kind of going into Eneru's territory. But the main focus of the fruit would be to turn into a storm cloud, and maybe like the lower half of your body can like rain down on things. Like you could fly because you're a cloud. And the whole concept around the fruit is rain. Rain specifically, alright? So it might have other things that connect it back to other fruits, but rain is the focus. That's what I was going with there. You know, at the end of the day, devil fruit users are weak to only liquids that are standing and they come up to a certain point. So I think a rain-powered fruit would be okay, because it's not standing water, it's rain. So devil fruit users can be in the rain, they can take showers, that's fine. They can have water dripping on them, it's just, you know, coming up to a certain level is the thing that actually damages them. And if the user of this rain fruit were to get dunked into water, they would still get weak just like every other devil fruit user. It's just that their power is literally rain. I also thought, you know, because we know Dragon can control storms and stuff, if Dragon is in fact a Logia and he could turn into like maybe a storm cloud, he controls wind and stuff, all the things that come from a storm cloud. Just an idea that's out there. Something else that is connecting back to a current devil fruit user. So we have Apu. We don't know the name of Apu's devil fruit. We know it's a paramecia, and he can controls musical instruments. So that's like the concept of his fruit, musical instruments. He can make his arm into a trumpet. He can, you know, the piano teeth, you know, the cymbals on his head, you know, and he uses sound in order to damage his opponents. All right, well, what about a Logia that is like the literal concept of sound? So not creating instruments to create sound, the concept of sound itself. Alright, meaning that the person literally turns into sound waves. Now, that might be kind of abstract because you can't see sound, but maybe in the concept of One Piece, that's actually really cool. Oda could spin that, like somebody goes to punch the user of like the sound Logia, and their body just disappears. And you're like, what the hell? And they're literally turned into sound waves, and they can travel at the speed of sound, and they can just reverberate in your ears. And they're like, maybe the best way you could depict them in the sound form is just like their bodies are like just shimmering. So it's like they're not entirely invisible. You can kind of see the air kind of like shaking where their vibrations are located. Like they're like just literally like you know, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Not really. I was gonna say Shocker from Spider-Man, but it's not really. He has like, you know, sound vibration, like the devices he wears. He doesn't actually turn into sound, but something like that, you know, where you can actually like, you just see them shimmering in the air, and then they could just travel really fast and just blow out your eardrum. So something like that, kind of like an upgraded form, the advanced version of Apu's instrument fruit, because he doesn't have to create instruments to create the noise. He just is the noise. All right. So there's that. Going into other things in nature, like, so for example, we have like earth, we have snow, we have electricity. What about plant life? A lot of nature fruit ideas. In fact, a lot of people think, me included, that Green Bull, Admiral Green Bull, is going to have some kind of nature-based fruit. So he's essentially going to be Hashirama from Naruto, maybe to control trees or something. But more specifically than just like a tree fruit, let's go with just leaves. Just leaves. Just leaves. He turns into leaves, and the leaves can, like, you know, scatter places and maybe like turn into like razor leaves from like Pokemon and like slice you up. You know, I'm gonna punch you! Just explodes into leaves and just I mean, I can see it. You can see it work. I mean, there's weirder fruits in One Piece than that, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, the leaves, they might have a little bit of moisture in them, so they would be a little bit resistant to fire, at least a little bit. If you keep, like, the flamethrower, like, if Ace just lit them up, they would eventually burn and wither. But, like, initially, it wouldn't be, like, something immediately. So, yeah, I mean, that's just an idea, leaves. Something else, though, what about this? What about moss? A moss fruit. Yeah. I know, right? You turn into moss. Like, your body can literally turn into, like, a shapeless mold, like a slime of moss, and just... I mean, for stealth and reconnaissance, that would be perfect, because no one would notice moss. You know, just like, there's a bunch of moss on the side of that building. All right, who cares? Now talk about our secret plans in front of the moss. You know, no one suspects the moss. The problem with the moss fruit is that you can only face north at any given time. That would be the downside of the moss fruit. Now, that's actually an urban legend. That actually doesn't happen. You know, moss can grow anywhere. It doesn't have to grow north. I remember when I was a kid, I think I watched an episode of, like, Scooby-Doo where they said that, like, moss always grows north. And I actually believed that for longer than I care to admit. This was in an era before, like, you know, Google existed, all right? You forgive me there. But yeah, like leaves or moss, other kind of plant life that you could just turn into, that'd be pretty useful there. And also the moss fruit, think about like gwomping somebody, like you touch someone and then moss just grows on them, maybe like zaps their energy or something like that. Like, oh god, a moss, I'm being infected like the freaking pod people or something. That'd be actually kind of terrifying. A glass fruit. Because glass, like volcanic glass, naturally occurs in nature. I think that counts. But more so than just a glass fruit, because you think that might be kind of fragile, right? Well, yeah, it would be. Except if you're talking about, what if once again, going back into like a grain sort of like, you know, crocodile sand kind of fruit. What if it was like powdered glass? Like, so you have the glass fruit, you could turn into like powdered glass, all right? So once again, you wouldn't have all the advantages that crocodile has, like being able to create sandstorms and like dry people out. But this might be getting a little grisly and kind of seinen for One Piece, but powdered glass, someone attacks you and you cover them with that and it gets in their eyes and their mouth and goes inside of them. That's horrifying. That is absolutely horrifying. In fact, I think that was a weapon back when ninjas were doing their thing in Japan. They had these things called black eggs where they would take, because, you know, they were farmers. Ninjas, like, originally were, like, you know, peasants and farmers. You take an egg and you use a special technique to, like, blow out all of the yolk, and so you have a hollow egg, and then they would coat it with, like, a special kind of, like, black resin to, like, increase its, like, durability a little bit, and then they'd take crushed glass or something similar, like a powder, and they'd, like, put it inside of the egg, seal up the hole with the resin, and then you basically have a weapon. You do have a weapon, because, like, you know, samurai come and attack, or somebody attacks your village or something, take the damn thing and just... You know, like, you'd have powdered glass in your eyes, and then what's the first thing you do when you get when you get anything in your eye, like something's in your eye and, like, you know, irritating you? What's the first thing you do? It's like, you know, yeah. Yeah, your eyes are done. You're just done at that point. They were probably already done, but, you know, when you do that, you just... You know? Like I said, maybe a little bit too grisly, seinen-ish for One Piece, but... glass is natural. That's how I would use a glass fruit if I had a glass fruit. I'm just saying, you know? So the next one I have is kind of similar to the other ones I've talked about. It's probably the most similar to a fruit that already exists. Smoker can turn into smoke. He has the Moku Moku no Mi. So I thought, okay, what about a steam fruit? Because smoke and steam are different things. You get smoke through combustion when you have like a campfire, and smoke has chemicals like CO2 in it, and steam is just like, you know, like water vapor could be like steam. You know, not like you make like a water and you boil it and you get steam coming out, and the steam is just the water. Like the chemical doesn't change. It just changes form from a liquid to a gas, all right? So you don't have like CO2 in the steam or anything like that, right? So you could have that. It wouldn't be as dangerous as smokers, I guess, although maybe you could like superheat the steam, like geothermal energy, like you have like geothermal vents and stuff. Maybe it could get really, really hot steam so you can like spread it around the battlefield and like scald people. So there would be applications for this, but I really don't think this is ever going to happen though, even less so than the other ones I talked about, because smoker's fruit is the Moku Moku. Moku is the onomatopoeia in Japanese for things like billowing, like clouds, alright? So it's already kind of in the name of the fruit. And also, Moku is actually an anagram for Kumo. Moku Kumo. Kumo is Japanese for cloud. Alright, so I think it might be too similar for Oda to get involved, but if he really wants to include it, fine. Fun fact, Kumo is also Japanese for spider. It can also be read as spider. So, ooh, can we get a spider Logia up in here? I'm not even talking about, like, the spider zone that Onigumo probably has. You make the spider legs. No. Like, I'm talking a Logia that literally turns you into a giant glob of spiders. And then you just expand and, like, little spiders go everywhere on the battlefield. That would be the strongest Logia easily, by far. Or it could just turn you into Rachnera. That also would be okay. That would be alright. I wonder if, like, instead of Onigumo, that's like this grizzled old marine guy, if, like, a sexy young girl had the spider zone, she would basically turn into Rachnera, I guess. Okay, alright, that's that. That's another one of my fantasies put on display. I'm just throwing that out there. Plastic. Just because, as human beings, we've certainly incorporated plastic into our environment, so why not a plastic fruit? I mean, we kind of already have, well, rubber is naturally occurring, and Luffy's already rubber, so plastic, yeah, maybe not too much. That was more of a reach, but whatever. The thought crossed my mind, so there you go. There was a non-canon character in One Piece in the second movie, Clockwork Island, Honey Queen. Alright, she was a Logia. In fact, she was the first non-canon Logia, I think, to ever be introduced in the story. She was actually defeated by Nami, of all people, in that movie. So, boom, Nami takes down a Logia. You would think because her name was Honey Queen that she could turn into honey, but that wasn't exactly true. We actually never found out what the substance she turns into is. She never called it anything, but it's definitely not honey. It's a lot more like liquidy than honey is. You know, honey is a lot more like, you know, well, I have some right here. That's convenient. Thanks, Barry. I just happen to have some honey in my room at all time, and the substance she turned into was like more like gelatin or like jelly, something that's a little bit more fluid. It could pass through like water spouts and stuff like that. So yeah, honey's a little bit more viscous, right? But then you also had Gasparade in the fourth movie, Dead End Adventure, that can turn into like literally more of a candy syrupy kind of substance. It was a syrup, and then his weakness was flour. Get flour on him, he can't spread, alright? So, with that being said, with like different food products and stuff that like naturally exist, not naturally exist, that's the point, they don't naturally exist. Honey does, but like the candy syrup and stuff, I think that's man-made mostly. Maybe there is like a naturally occurring syrup out there. I'm not really, like, I guess like, yeah, the sap from trees, I guess, like a sap fruit, I guess you could work with that. Yeah, you could work with that, but like I think the substance that Gasparade was turning into was more like corn syrup, you know, like literally like that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, I guess there's naturally occurring stuff like that in nature. But if you want to open up the door to all that stuff, you got honey, you got like a peanut butter Logia, it turns into peanut butter Logia. You got the sauce, you could turn into sauce, tomato sauce, and you could just keep going. The mustard fruit. Behold my power, I turn into mustard, but only Dijon mustard. Yellow mustard is another Logia altogether. I actually hate that guy, but whatever. So if you're going to open up the door to that kind of stuff, you just keep stacking on different Logias. You could keep that going for a couple, dozen more users, I think, in that case. The ketchup Logia, the mayonnaise Logia. Yeah, alright, but, yeah. I'm gonna end this out with, probably the coolest one out of the bunch here I came up with, and I'm sure many of you probably have already come up with it as well. If you're just looking at the periodic table of elements, kind of like I did last night, you look at the periodic table of elements and you're like, all right, what could be a new fruit here? I'm looking down the options and I'm like, a helium fruit, that's kind of inert. A tin fruit, tin's kind of lame. A plutonium-based fruit, or like a uranium-based fruit, or just radiation, or just raw energy itself. Like, not even getting into elements in that case, but just like the gamma nomi. You know, I literally turn into like the Incredible Hulk, but I also radiate gamma radiation, yeah. Did the Hulk ever actually because the Hulk is because of gamma radiation, right? So does that mean the Hulk is constantly outputting gamma rays? That actually would be, like, even more devastating than the muscles and the brute strength, be able to lift up a giant tank and, like, crush it and eat it. Like, he just outputs gamma rays wherever he goes. That's way more deadly. But no, okay, yeah. So, an energy-based Logia. That is the one I think Oda probably would be considering the most, maybe for like later stages in One Piece when it starts to get really, really intense. We could have a really powerful character introduced in like one of the final arcs that is a Logia, and he literally just outputs radiation, so you can't even get close to the dude, you know? Like, it gets so hot, it just burns up everything around him, or, you know, the rays would just make you sick if you even get close to the thing. Like, read up on Chernobyl, and you got, like, that elephant's foot thing in the basement of Chernobyl, the facility, this just glob of just, like, cement and just the molten magma that's, like, cooled down, but it's just so damn radioactive, you can't even get close to the thing without getting a headache. You know, something like that. That's the power of the freaking, you know, the radiation fruit, or the gamma fruit, or something like that. I have no idea how you would even fight against that thing, but if you're gonna, like, if Oda's gonna sit down and be like, alright, we're getting into the final stages of One Piece, I want to make a Logia that is, like, objectively the strongest Logia. I guess also Blackbeard's Darkness Fruit, well, he's more Darkness Gravity, would also be a contender for the absolute strongest. But even the Logia, the Darkness Fruit, it has a lot of drawbacks, too, to it. But you have a Radiation Fruit that has very minimal drawbacks and just outputs. The drawback is it kills, and the guy has to be a loner. It kills everything that comes in contact with him or even close to him. That would be the downside. But beyond that, the user, of course, would be unaffected and just radiation powers. You know, like, you know, Gamma Beam! Boom! Does it make sense? It doesn't have to! One Piece! Cosmic Ray Beam! Boom! Radio Beam! Oh, actually, radio waves. He can, like, intercept transmissions and shit. That would actually be really neat, too. So, yeah, those are just some ideas that I was throwing out there. Salt, glass, clouds, radiation, leaves, plastic, honey. Take your pick, and let me know below on some other Logias you think would be, well, give me some ideas for Logias that, like, you would like to see in the story, but also talk about things that, like, I could actually see this happening. Like the nature-themed ones, like leaves or moss. I could actually see Green Bull having something like that, or maybe just a fruit that controls wood or nature in general. That's feasible. But a lot of these other ones, I'm just spitballing ideas, but like the rain concept, like maybe, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, everybody. Have a great one. Here's Eneru's abs to close us out. Signing out, everybody. I do my own Foley. Bye, everyone.